24th day, April 24. Welcome everybody, and we're back. Who's we? Oh, it's Dana Durnford, also known as the nuclear proctologist.org, and you can call in at 709-589-4406. 4406. Let's get after it. There's another YouTuber in Fukushima in a nuclear wasteland. No quipping on, no nothing. Their parents should be arrested, but we got bigger fish to fry. Israel minister vows a Palestinian Holocaust. It's 2008. Here's another one, blast from the past. 2014. A Palestinian bragging on Twitter. That's his post on Twitter. You can see it up there. I killed 13 children today. Nice guy. He didn't look for any Hamas. He's just looking for Palestinians, right? They're actually told, don't shoot Hamas. And all the Hamas that they killed, as far as I can tell, is an accident. They got no problem killing Palestinian women and children, though. I killed like when you're an Israeli soldier, a child soldier, they're gone full Nazi, right? Even, if Nazis were alive today, they wouldn't put up on Twitter, I killed 13 Israeli children today. Only an Israeli would do something like that. And these children that are not fighting a war because it's turkey shoot, right? You're not fighting anybody. And the resistance is because you're slaughtering everybody. They got to fight back. They got no choice. It's such a strange story because Israel, like, oh, we're the best in the world, we're this, we're that. But you never even fought a real war. Like, Palestine didn't have 4,000 or 5,000 tanks shooting depleted uranium munitions. Palestine doesn't have a navy. Palestine doesn't have an air force. Palestine is not the fourth biggest weapons producer on the planet. Palestine is not funded by most countries worldwide. Palestine has no water, no food, no electricity. Imagine doing what they're doing to the Palestinians. Imagine doing that to the Jews. Imagine doing this to Israel. Israel's never looked like that. There's nowhere in Israel that even comes close to this. There's nothing in Israel that even resembles a tiny spot of this. But yet they call themselves soldiers because they're children, right? Like even the adults are like children. They get the IQ of a child. I killed 13 Palestinian kids today. And there's all kinds of people liking that post and laughing about it and yucking it up. No shame. Benjamin Netanyahu is out today condemning anti-Semitism. He's not even a Semite. He's from Europe, right? What's happening in American college campuses, universities is horrific, he says. Did he even look up what the word means? Anti-Semitic mobs have taken over leading universities. Anti-Semitic... Well, I mean, are people not supposed to speak out about this? How can Israel claim they're in a war when they're fighting people that don't have anything? No water, no food, no fuel for, 6 months now? 200 days? But now they got mass graves at the hospitals. 381 is the last count I've seen. They attacked the Jewish students while Israel is slaughtering a big fishbowl known as Gaza. They got drones, they got real drones, and they got other drones, like suicide drones. They attack Jewish students, they attack Jewish faculty. But what the hell is Israel doing? How can you come out and complain when you're doing much, like, the comparisons is... I mean, I hear a lot of people saying that Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu would be in jail and will end up in jail as soon as the war is over. So he has a big incentive to keep the war going for as long as he can. Israel doesn't look like this. Like, what are they doing? And they're using depleted uranium munitions. They're completely unhinged. And because you got these children soldiers that have generationally now, they don't know anything. All they know is they're supposed to hate Nazis, or they're supposed to act like Nazis and hate the Gaza, the Palestinians. Hamas is there as a cover story for them to hate the Palestinians. It's, you know, they got 34,000 official dead. Obviously, it's double or triple that is buried under the rubble. How are you going to recover the bodies from detonations like that? With no heavy equipment, no gas, no lights. And nobody cares about you. Israel soldier gets injured, they'll fly him to a MASH unit where he has doctors from all around the world, trauma specialists, you name it, to save their lives and limbs and everything else, right? It's such a weird disconnect that here's this, you know, this is his seventh term or something. More has to be done. He's talking about the American universities, not only because they attack Israel. Like, what are you talking about? Attacking Israel. Like, this is your daily... You just destroy everything. And then you got the audacity, the incredible arrogance to come out and claim, not only because they want to kill the Jews, no, they're fighting back against aggression from a country that is unhinged. And everybody knows what I'm saying is true. Except for the children that are fighting Israeli soldiers. They're children, right? Because I'm pretty sure the adults won't do something this savage. It has to be the children that are unhinged. You know, the reports are coming back from the last two hospitals. The 50 hospitals they had are all gone. And there's no one to oppose them. There's no tanks to worry about. There's no jet fighters to worry about. There's no drones to worry about. There's no military. There's no air force. There's no navy to worry about. So they just go and do whatever they want, and then they pat each other in the back and pretend that they're heroes or something. It's the strangest bloody thing. And then the Israelis, they know what's wrong. They'll come out and defend them in the comment sections. You see it all over the internet, even on videos with atrocious crimes. They're still there in the comments section trying to justify it. There's where do you draw a line to, I wonder? We see this exponential rise of anti-Semitism throughout America, and yet it is Israel that is falsely accused of genocide. Like, what are you talking about? Israel is falsely, like, you brag about your madness, your insanity, your heartlessness. Imagine if there was a Palestinian had a Twitter account and said, I killed 13 Israeli children today. The Jews would, well, not the Jews, I guess, but the Israelis, the crazies, particularly the headbangers like Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel is falsely accused of starvation. Yeah, well, no water, no food, no fuel for 6 months. That's starvation. The evidence is everywhere. Even the mainstream media carries the evidence. It's 100% starvation. What the Nazis had allegedly done to the Jews in Germany, Israel has surpassed it on just the Palestinians. I mean, they got 5 million refugees for over 50 years. No problem keeping them out. They can't seem to kill Hamas in 20 years. Accidentally, of course. They can kill a few, but we have to stop the anti-Semitism, because like anybody that criticizes the genocide is being labeled as anti-Semitic. And for a lot of people, that's terrifying, right? Because they don't know how to defend against that kind of label, right? But, I mean, what Israel is doing is clearly trying to turn the planet against them. Because, like the Bible says, the world will turn against Israel, and only those in Jerusalem will go to heaven. It's not that Jerusalem will survive or anything. It's Jerusalem will be destroyed too, but only the people in Jerusalem goes to heaven, right? So it seems like they're artificially trying to cause a prophecy to come true, right? Which is the ultimate one, obviously, where the planet is destroyed and only the people in Israel. And this is why they're ethnically cleansing, or Jerusalem rather. That's why they're ethnically cleansing Jerusalem. But I mean, my goodness, you know, when you put up on Twitter, I shot 13 children, and you're next. Obviously, that's IDF Combat Engineering Corps soldier, David Ovaldia. It's just a kid, right? These are kids. Under 21, you're just a kid. Your brain doesn't fully develop, or your eyes, until you're about 25, right? The White House is seeking answers from Israel on Gaza's mass grave. That's not true. A reporter brought it up, and then they were forced to respond, right? But they didn't voluntarily come out. In the United Kingdom, the discovery of mass graves of Palestinians should be treated as a war crime. Like, when you're killing all these people at a hospital, and like what they done to the bodies are disfigured, their heads are chopped off, their arms and legs chopped off, they're gutted. It's clearly torture. What a horrible way to die. But from people that glorify, they killed 13 Palestinian kids today, not Hamas, but Palestinian kids. That ideology, right? It's clear what's going on. This is 100% genocide. But it's on the ideology of the Bible. They artificially want the world to hate them, so that they fulfill a prophecy. And, you know, like, you get the average kid, they join the military because it's a job. They in Israel, they join it because they have to, but the majority of them join it because of this ideology that Israel has. Its entire existence is based upon hating the Palestinians, hating Muslims, hating everybody, really. Do you want answers from Israeli authorities after discovering mass graves at 2 Gaza hospitals? It's 50 hospitals now completely gone, right? It's unbelievable. The number's up to 381. And I mean, hacked up bodies, tortured bodies is what they're finding. Well, this has been going on for a long time. I don't cover it all the time at all. I generally cover nuclear. But Israel is using depleted uranium, and tonight I got no choice but to cover it, because the last 2 hospitals, you know, how can you do that, right? That's Nazi stuff, see? And it's just these generations of children. Each generation has got worse and worse, and now they're just unhinged. It's unhinged, really, what they're doing. Israeli wars kill at least 34,000, but how many Palestinian women and children, mostly, but how many are buried under the rubble? Palestinians, 34,200, not Hamas, but Palestinians. Parents and family want to know the fate of their loved ones, whether they're dead or arrested or gone missing. And, of course, Israel, they got to give us back our hostages. But nobody's allowed to ask Israel for their loved ones, right? Sterilize, here's another blast from the past. Sterilize the Palestinian people. With the Israeli ambassador listening. Genocide permissible in Gaza. And now I have a collection for the last 6 months of Israelis who call for annihilation of the Palestinians. It's around 300 videos. And no, it was just meant as just to gather up some of the evidence, but I just keep running into it nonstop. They're not ashamed of themselves. They're not hiding it, and it's on purpose, 100% on purpose. And they're targeting the kids and the children, and the fresh water, and everything else. Genocide is permissible in Gaza, and this is the times of Israel. This is a video of them knocking down Yasser Arafat's monument because they're worried Hamas is going to hide. This is a airstrike in university. No, this is not just a single university. Look at this. All residential areas. But they took it to major university, get rid of education, burn all the books. This stuff Nazis were doing, exactly the same stuff, right? Israel's using white phosphorus. Have anybody ever dropped white phosphorus over Israel? Can you imagine if someone dropped white phosphorus over Israel? The media worldwide would sing and cry for weeks. But Israel is totally acceptable. Yeah, no, they're God's chosen one. But who wrote the Torah? Who wrote the Talmud? God didn't write it. Whoever wrote it must have been a Jew and said, we're God's chosen people. But God didn't write it, say Israel is God's chosen people. But if ask an Orthodox Jew, and they'll say, well, we're God's chosen people. And therefore, we should kill everything because we got to go up and to the pearly gates, which is only for us that are in Jerusalem itself. This is why. This is Israelis in Palestinian, and they took over the land there a few months back. And this is one of the water wells that feeds the olive orchards. And so they cemented it so there's no way to come back to these orchards. Israel admits burning hundreds of people on the 7th of October. And I posted a couple of videos originally from IDF former intelligence soldiers who came out and asked why Israel didn't try to stop the people from crossing into their country, because they got one of the best borders fences on the planet, right? With auto guns and deep underground fences. They just waltzed right through and came in, done whatever they want. And there was some fractions of Israeli finally just, instead of standing down, but the majority of the Israelis stood down, right? And allowed it to happen so they can use it as a justification to go in and flatten Gaza. Like taking down Arafat's monument, they're not hunting Hamas. You know, when you shoot 13 Palestinian children in a single day, you're not hunting Hamas. And how many other days was he doing? That's the day that he happened to post it. How many was it the day before that and the day before that? Israel using children as human shields. Right, you can see it right there. Using children as human shields, which is normal for Israel for some reason. What would Israel do if Palestine had 4,500 tanks like Israel did? Had hundreds of jet fighters and hundreds of fighter helicopters and hundreds of large drones and thousands of small drones, and had the fourth biggest weapons producer on the planet as their country, and the list goes on and on and on. Israel wouldn't go near it because it's a fair fight. Israel can't win a fair fight. They wouldn't even try. They're not stupid. They're just stupid. Well, they are stupid. Like when you when you're bragging that you killed 13 children today, when you brag about stuff like that, there's a disconnect there that I got nothing to compare it to. I just don't understand in a normal world how that's acceptable, but I understand how it's acceptable in Israel because every facet of their life is fear. All the Palestinian children are going to grow up and get you. You got to kill them. When you get a gun, when we give you a gun, when you're old enough to join the army, you'll still be a kid, but we'll give you a gun. Because you're a kid, you can go out and kill them because you still haven't got a conscience yet. So the whole society is trauma-based society. Israel minister vows a Palestinian Holocaust. That was 2008. Senior Israeli politician. And invoking the word Holocaust, but the numbers for their weapons that Israel has used against the Palestinians, that's really something. It's equal to about 27 Nagasaki bombs worth of munitions is the equivalent they dropped on Gaza. 2 million people don't even have a home no more. They destroyed 2 million people's home, the infrastructures, the communities. Because they're better than everybody else, right? The Israelis are better, and they can do whatever they want, and there's nobody to hold them accountable, and they know it, so there's no incentive not to be evil. And guess what happens when there's no incentive not to be evil? Well, it's really clear what happens. Because it's been going on for so long, this was normal. They're still doing that today. They're just not on Instagram or Twitter as much. Hi, everybody. Oh, Stephen Young's doing the infusion. Today was the last day, hopefully. And he get a month's break. My goodness. I can't imagine. Hi, everyone. Well, let's get on to more radioactive news, I guess. Radiation levels at Koriyama School, same as near Daiichi. Koriyama, every house in the city is entitled to be decontaminated, but you can't decontaminate a house. You have to take it down and move it to a dump, right? Taiwan food testing of Japanese imports. First off, Taiwan is testing radiation limit is 370 atoms a kilogram. And a single atom could eventually trigger a cancer because your body attacks it for the rest of your life with white blood cells and builds a sarcophagus around it. But the Japanese food limit was 500 atoms a kilogram till April 2012. So 13 months. And then they dropped it down to 100 becquerels a kilogram. And the reason they done that, because there was a bunch of things happen. In 2012, it came out the first year there was an extra 865,000 cancers. Not everybody has health care. Not everybody was diagnosed. And so this is a crazy number. Within 1 year, you got an extra almost 1 million people with cancers. There was 13,646 out of 38,000 children with thyroid tumors of 2 centimeters or bigger. And the thyroid on an adult is 3 by 5 centimeters. So a child is much smaller, right? So you're talking about a tumor bigger than the thyroid itself, which also means you're producing radioactive hormones. And if you got that much radiation in your body, because that's what it's caused by, because your thyroid is saturated, then you're also producing radioactive stem cells, right? Unstable nuclear waste dam threatens fertile Central Asia heartland. A dam holding a vast amount of 700,000 cubic meters, 185 million gallons. And they said it's going to be a Chernobyl. It will make the whole area uninhabitable. And this is low-level radiation we're talking about, right? But it's still nasty. So if you took like a 1-ton bag is 6 feet by 6 feet by 6 feet, right? So if you just stack them alongside of each other, that's 840 miles of 1-ton bags just in that one place. And in a dam that's going to break, which is equal to, what's the conversion? Hang on here. So that's 1,350 kilometers, 840 miles. And the space station is 400 kilometers above. So that's 3.3 times the distance. So you can go to the space station with 1-ton bags, back to Earth 1-ton bags, back up to the space station again, and a third of the way back to Earth again with 1-ton bags from just that one spot of waste from the nuclear industry. But everything fits in a swimming pool, doesn't it? Inside Fukushima red zone, eerie pictures show abandoned schools. This is the strangest story. Hospitals. It's trending right now. I've seen it everywhere today. Entry to some of the zones which continue to have relatively high... What do you mean relatively high radiation levels? Remain strictly limited. Difficult to return. We call them nuclear wastelands, right? A British urban explorer has lifted the lid on the untouched world of Japanese prefecture red zone. There's lots of people done it before him. Sneaking into abandoned buildings, including the nuclear control room itself. And sharing eerie pictures of what he discovered. Eerie pictures, like he's got no papers. He doesn't even have a paper suit on. Not that can protect you. But the first thing he should do is throw away all his clothes and shave his head and his eyebrows, right? Because they're going to be saturated with isotopes. And if he takes that clothing and washes it with his other laundry, all that's going to be radioactive. And like, because you're going to get that in your body, and then your body's going to attack it for the rest of your life with white blood cells, which means you get less oxygen, less nutrition in your body, because every white blood cell, you're going to displace a red blood cell. And whenever you see these pictures with their school bags on their desk, I don't understand that. Why are all the school bags on the desk? Have you ever seen it? Like when we were in school, you never see a picture like that. The abandoned hospital, I mean, you know, in Fukushima, there was a couple of urban explorers in 2019 were into the hospitals in Fukushima, which is a couple of kilometers from the ongoing nuclear meltdowns. And they went back this year, or late last year, I can't remember. Yeah, early this year or late last year. And all the hospital equipment was gone, like $1 billion worth of theater, surgery, and everything was gone. And the Pinko machines, like, this is a nuclear wasteland for 13 years. Why would you go in there and breathe the air? Because there's no way you're not going to get sick down the road from that experience. Like, the wind is blowing this stuff. It's not never even stopped melting down. It's not abandoned because, like, so radiation is not like a magnet where it's fixed. It's just floating around. You can't stop breathing it in. And so just breathing it in for a few seconds means now that's in your body. Your body is going to attack it with white blood cells for the rest of your life and compromises your immune system. I mean, this is the epitome of stupid. You literally got to be stupid to go into this place. And like just going there with a paper suit on and gloves and face mask and everything else, it doesn't really protect you. But at least you can get that off you. You haven't got all this dust on you. You bring it back to your hotel rooms and put in your laundry and everything else, right? Why would you go there? It's a nuclear wasteland. Everything is airborne. You're going to breathe it in. Like a typical mask is 30 to 50 microns, right? These atoms, you can put 100 of them in a micron because you can't even see it, right? And so, well, thousands in a micron, you can't. Like a mask can't protect you. It just can't protect you. Even the most sophisticated mask can't protect you from radiation. Lukka Ventures 27 is exploring abandoned buildings in UK. Got really popular, I guess, on YouTube. And he explored a red zone after watching the documentary. Hey, let's go into the nuclear wasteland because I'm smarter than everybody else, all the scientists and everybody on the planet. It won't hurt me. I'm famous. I'm on YouTube. It can't hurt me. He snooped around abandoned hospitals, nuclear wastelands. He's from Manchester. He describes his visit as a surreal experience. Because he thinks that if it's not on the Geiger counter, or even if the Geiger counter doesn't hit a certain limit, he's okay. Like, how do you get that complacent, I wonder? Because you're breathing it in, it's airborne. It's radioactive particles. You can't see it or smell it or hear it or taste it or touch it or feel it or pick it up or throw rocks at it. Carried a Geiger counter, one of these stupid, cheap Geiger counters. And they can only pick up lightly if at best some gamma. Whatever you get on Geiger counters like that, you should multiply by 600 different isotopes to get an idea of what you're really being exposed to make sure he wasn't exposing himself. So the media loves these stories because it lulls people into complacency, reinforces the 80 years of propaganda. He said, we were sneaking through rivers and fences, and we had to be really careful how irradiated some of the areas were. Like, there's nowhere these are not abandoned because of mold or economics or something. They're abandoned because airborne radioactive fallout has made everything untouchable and unbreathable. And look, he's got three people. He got him, there's another guy there behind him on the same line with his two arms up in the air like he won. And then they got a girl there. So you got three people there with no protection. And then they're all going to do their laundry and whoever machine, because they're going to do it in a machine. They don't have their own, they don't live there. So they're going to do it somewhere. And they're going to radiate those laundry machines, right? And other people are going to be affected by their incompetence, their arrogance, their contempt for themselves and their loved ones to go into a nuclear wasteland. Because someone's going to have to take care of them in a few years when they start getting sick, and they will get sick. You don't, like, the reason there's no one there is because you're not supposed to be there. It's a nuclear wasteland. You can't see it or smell it or hear it or feel it or taste it or touch it. Like, it's not something you can pick up, right? You can touch it and you can't get it off you. It's electrically charged. I like to interview their parents to find out how they ever got to, how their child could be that complacent. So the poll tonight is a pretty straightforward poll. Should the International Atomic Energy Agency apologize for claiming Fukushima never dumped any water into the Pacific Ocean? Until August of 2024, right? 2023, rather. So the building to your left That building over there is Reactor 4. Now, the official story is nothing got out of that, and here's a bunch of journalists, and we covered this a lot last night, and they said, here we are at Reactor 4 fuel pool, but the fuel pool obviously, which is about 120 feet above the stump there, a Reactor 4 can't exist, neither can the reactor cores. They were at the top of the buildings, right? Because they were doing maintenance, then all the 3/4 of the fuel was still in the reactor core. So that went kapooey. And then there's decades and decades of reactor cores in the fuel pools that are gone. It's around 10 reactor cores at the top of each building, 5 in each pool. There could be a lot more because you don't have a repository anywhere. International Atomic Energy Agency task force will meet Japanese officials. Expect again, so the International Atomic Energy Agency's job is to hoodwink planet Earth and destroy the 8 million species and the future of humanity, one way or another. If Israel doesn't do it, the International Atomic Energy Agency, UN, also known as the League of Nations. So Reactor 3 and Reactor 4 is pretty obvious. But there's Reactor 1 and Reactor 2 are the same too, but it's not so obvious looking, see? And all of them had 2 fuel pools at the top of the buildings. They're gone also. So 8 fuel pools and 4 massive reactor cores. Gone. So the International Atomic Energy Agency says nothing got out of Fukushima, everything's in the tanks. But they picked up 30 million one-ton bags in Japan. Give or take a couple of 100,000. And because there's 149,000 pictures missing, I had artificial intelligence cook me up some of the pictures that we figure are missing. And I'm sure it's going to be much worse than what we're looking at there of one-ton bags. So the IAEA is claiming nothing got out of Fukushima, despite the fact that they picked up 30 million one-ton bags. And they acknowledged that until last year on July the 13th, 2023, when they come out and said it was like 3 grams of sugar, everything that got out of there. Dubious safety record taints China's Communist Party pursuit of deploying floating nuclear plants in South China Sea. China's going into disputed territories and just dredging everything out of the territories and bringing it back and making China a fraction, not a fraction, I guess, but a itty bitty tiny bit bigger. So these are all Chinese dredgers out into these beautiful archipelagos. These are paradises. And they're just dredging everything, bring it back. Because they don't want Malaysia, they don't want other countries that are disputing China's claim. And then they want to have floating reactors out there. Some of these territories they're doing it to is Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, Vietnam, by dredging and militarizing previously uninhabited reefs and causing significant... Yeah, because now when you have storms, it just destroys the rest of it. It doesn't have that million-year ecosystem there, right? But look at all these dredges. My goodness. Why don't they just go dig up a mountain they got? They got lots of mountains in China. Isn't it better to go dig the mountains rather than use dredges like this and destroy the... Because these are nurseries too, right? For the ocean. Inspections of aquatic products imported from Japan. It's Hong Kong. Why even bother, Dana? You know they're going to lie and lie and lie. I know. Let's just cover it a little bit. Because it's really something. Taiwan is pretty evil. In response to the Japanese government plan to discharge the nuclear contaminated water at Fukushima, So the idea is to cause this controversy, right? The plan to release it. Well, they never stopped releasing it. I mean, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags. Over how many years? 5 years or something? And to suggest that nothing got out all of a sudden is why we got a poll tonight. Because we can't tolerate this. This is insanity. Should the International Atomic Energy Agency apologize for claiming Fukushima never dumped any water into the Pacific Ocean? Why would anybody vote against it? Why would you vote against it? Why be that desperate? For other Japanese aquatic products, sea salt and seaweeds are not prohibited. You're talking about a country that picked up 30 million one-ton bags in just 3% of their land. Don't worry though, in the near future the Geiger counter machines will be out there everywhere. Nuclear waste storage facility told to take action after a breach here in Canada. And look at the farmlands all around these facilities. See all the farmlands? As far as you can see in every direction. Every nuclear facility is surrounded by farmland. What's the odds? It was an accident. Low-level waste repository in Colombia, which is where they have cancer clusters too, right, for children. Don't worry though, they had a study that says it's caused by the common flu. But that's Sellafield, right, that they're showing you. Look how disconnected, right, some of this is. Or that's the low-level waste, but if you look at a real picture of it, just so happens to be surrounded by farms, same as Sellafield. Britain is one great big crime anyway, isn't it? There's Sellafield. You got to look up. Look again. Look how blurred these pictures are. Because when you get a clean picture, then the question is, well, there's a lot of farms close to those 1,000 nuclear waste buildings. Right up to the fences, right up to the nuclear waste site is self farmland. Every nuclear site is like it too. Because you can't contain the radiation. So the best way is poison you so you can't complain you're too busy being sick. Sellafield admit disposing of radioactive waste at the wrong site. I'm surprised they dispose of it anywhere instead of just dumping it. That's what they usually do. That's what they've done for the first 30 years. They just dumped it. They went out in they had special built cargo ships. Would just go out and push the 45-gallon drums over the side, and they would just chug along on the continental shelf, right, in the shallow water. And so when they spent 30 years dumping 45-gallon drums, and so as soon as they get down around 100 feet, they implode. Because there's 3 atmospheres, right? It's a stupid industry, man. And they know what they were doing. They knew it would be decades before we would figure it out. Well, we're wrong. It was a lot more than decades. 80 years now. To make sure that nobody can have a future. There will be no future for species, insects, birds, or nothing. They're almost all gone now. Post Fukushima, right? Fukushima was a major pulse event. Oh, poor Sellafield. It was caused by a new monitor, which passed the bags as general waste. It's okay. It's nuclear industry. Ex-Ontario nuclear power plant worker denied bail after allegedly leaking secret information. What the hell could you leak from a nuclear plant as secret, I wonder? That they're dumping it into the fresh water, maybe? Why is a lot of TV reporters bald? We see so many like that, in Canada. Nuclear tomb inside abandoned wreck of a sunken Russian nuclear submarine. 100,000 times more radioactive than the surface. Like, as soon as you read a story like that, you just want to go slap some of these people. And this submarine, by the way, we're familiar with that. We've covered that over the years quite a few times. And so this submarine, there's a study, the sunken nuclear submarine, and its effect on the environment. Oh, no, there's no effect in it. It is found that neither the submarine hull nor the reactor vessel will be destroyed by corrosion for at least 1,000 years. So now they're saying that, like, first off, to build these subs, there was no way to decommission them, right? Let the next generation worry about that. It is found that neither the submarine hull nor the vessel will be destroyed, but they're in the bottom of the ocean. Did I mention that? And no matter, because it's a submarine, therefore it can't be destroyed for 1,000 years. There's quite a few videos out there of these submarines that are completely deteriorated. There's just like the original generations. You lose hope though, right? Because they're so insane. Oh, don't worry, it's like a banana, even if it does get out. It's like a potato chip. Nuclear waste, the mystery of the military ranges. Defense sites must be added to 14 suitable sites, there's 50 of them, I think, on the island, many of which are located in Sardinia. 51 shades of grey. No, they didn't put that there by accident. And a black hole. That of the Ministry of Defense, a radioactive map with 51 municipalities at risk, of which 14 are Sardinian. They don't just go to war against another country, they go to war against your home because of the pollution they use. And not counting the military areas. So 51 plus another 50. Non-equivocal point on the agenda of the G7. The G7 shouldn't even exist. The men of the International Atomic Energy Agency. They're not men. Come on, let's be reasonable. They're monsters. They look like men, but they're not men. International Degenerate Industry. Nuclear fuel removal has come a long way. This is San Onofre. All these things are vented. Look. Maniacs. The industry is so evil for so long, it doesn't have the ability to be anything. But they're like Israel, right? They don't. Evil is the only thing that works, the only thing they know. And how many years now have they crucified the Palestinians and cried about everybody being anti-Semitic? I mean, they're not even anti-Semitics. They moved there from all over the world. They're not originally from that area. No longer active. The plant's roughly 3.55 million pounds of spent nuclear fuel pose a potential environmental health threat, given that Song's location, they got 3.5 million pounds of spent nuclear fuel. So if you took a pound of this and put it in the wall of a subway where everybody's walking through, everybody who walks past it will die that day for 1 million years. So you can put a pound everywhere. Like if you want to assassinate somebody and you're a government, and you know what gate they were going to walk through at an airport, dignitaries, you would just have the stuff planted there and then they walk past it and then they die a few weeks later or that night or whatever. It's an active fault line on the beaches as sea level rises. Well, it just takes one good tsunami. I've made a top priority to find a bipartisan path to address our nation's spent nuclear fuel located at Songs and 80 other sites in 34 states. Be very careful of that kind of language. If you put everything into one spot, when they melt down, they will eventually melt down, you'll lose everything, see? Island of Right neutron detector wins award. And that's Victoria. She's the Director of Business Development Administration. And this is when they used at Fukushima to see if there's any fuel in the reactors. Of course, like, you don't need a neutron detector. You need a psychiatrist. Because all you gotta do is look at the pictures and you know there's no fuel left, right? And she gets the award in order to make her feel like a good person, but her job was to cover up the truth and so all the children get sick and die. That's her job. She doesn't even know, probably, or maybe she does. Who knows? Visitors flock to see Fukushima cherry blossoms planted for the Princess Aiko. And this is in the forest where there was no cleanup whatsoever. I say that word loosely because they're scraping up the top 2 centimeters and putting it in 30 million one-ton bags. That's not actually cleaning up. But they're only doing that in farmland and everything else. So these places are unhinged radiation numbers. It's not very far from Koriyama City, by the way. Yeah, not very far from Koriyama. It's like it's a pass through a mountain there. Welcome to stupid. It's called nuclear and anything attached to it. Climate change impact on Seabrook nuclear plant demands a deeper reporting. And Seabrook, which is closed, I think, fails to address the climate impact on nuclear plants, which is caused by 80 years of emissions into the ecosystem. That is climate change. Climate change is actually real. It's caused by radiation, invisible plumes covering your entire planet. Invisible plumes. Well, not. We can visualize them through modeling, right? And these models are always based on very tiny numbers, not the actual inventories. So the model doesn't include the inventories from those buildings or anything close to it. But this is March the 19th over there, March the 19th, or I'm sorry, March the 31st, 20 days, and then 21 days, April the 1st of 2011, and Neptunium-239 decays to plutonium. And so you're covering the whole planet in a massive plume. And you get the same models for plutonium. And this, I'm just right at my fingertips. Here we go. That's the Neptunium-239. This is the plutonium-239. You know, because the buildings actually melted down, right? They really did. But officially, the International Atomic Energy Agency, as of last year, says nothing got out of these buildings until August the 24th of last year. So for 12 years, nothing is getting out of those buildings. How are you supposed to have a conversation with that? According to an attorney, what happened at 3 Mile Island? Oh, well, I jumped the shark here. Go backwards. Into the streets. Radioactive to women at 3 Mile Island. We've covered this a couple of times in the last number of months. This is a documentary about 3 Mile Island. It's a cover story, right? And this is the cover-up. And they say 3 Mile Island is one of the biggest cover-up in history that hasn't been uncovered until now, because they're trying to sell a documentary, right? But what they've done here is a cover-up of 3 Mile Island. Huntner is an environmental humanities professor we've covered before. Stony Brook University documented the experience of 4 alarmed, instead of a radioactive women, who lived near the nuclear meltdowns at the time and who dared question the industry. And then they got nice pictures. And it blessed their hearts, right? You know, trying to raise awareness. But the industry quick realized they can use them as a public campaign to promote nuclear, really. Exactly how bad the 3 Mile Island actually was is subject to debate, but what are you talking about? It's a nuclear meltdown. There's no debating. And so instead of those, you should never say a word like that. It should be, here's a whole bunch of information that they never told you, because you said you were going to expose it. It's one of the biggest cover-up in history that has been uncovered until now. And instead you just keep the conjectures and opinions instead of telling the story, right? Was a major risk. No, it's radioactive fallout. So here's what it looks like when it melts down. And this inventory, this depiction I'm going to show you was venting. It wasn't Fukushima. It wasn't the actual meltdown. So this is venting. So, and you can see the dates up there. I'll give you a running count here when it catches up. This is day 10. 11, 12, 13, 14. It's day 20. So after 20 days, the whole planet's covered. But the number that this model is based up is smaller than the amount I got out of 3 Mile Island. So this plume is based on a fraction of what got out of 3 Mile Island. This plume is Fukushima plume. But it's based, if you use the same numbers as 3 Mile Island, this is what 3 Mile Island looks like. This is the same thing, right? Because Fukushima, they said the only thing got it was venting. Everything was vented. And this model, by the way, is France's model. And it's based on 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air of cesium-137. And cesium-137 pulses 600 feet every second, almost at the speed of light. A former NASA senior detector engineer said the meltdown of the plant's unit released radioactive gases, which is basically what this model was based on for Fukushima. Radioactive gases was venting, right? But and created a hydrogen bubble that threatened to blow up the plant like an atomic bomb. Well, atomic bomb will blow up the whole site, not the reactor. A whistleblower whose face is obscured to protect his identity alleges the meltdown exposed nearby communities. Again, it can't be just nearby communities because just a small amount will create plumes that covers the entire planet. Right, and we know this. We have all kinds of radioactive fallout to quantify that particular assertion. Right, and the models are always based on a fraction of what actually came out of 3 Mile Island. If you done a comparable number, right? So that model is based on 26 days. This model is based on 20 days to your left, and this one is based on 20 days to your left, 21 to your right. We have a lot more than that. And these models were based on 20 days, for instance. This next model was based on 19.5 days, 468 hours, Norwegian Institute for Air Research. And the idea is, right, you're not allowed, anything that can hurt the nuclear industry is bad, right? So they refuse to say stuff like that. Which have been linked. So they talk about iodine-131, but there's an absurd amount of isotopes you should be talking about. The biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rod is curium isotopes. And curium isotopes, you need lead shielding 10 times thicker than you do, 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. And in the plutonium studies, all the animals died. The billions of animals worldwide they done it to, they all died A horrible death. It's torture, right, to kill an animal with radiation. Because you let them live out their life, and they all had 3 tumors from the liver, the lung, and the skeleton. So for children and animals, that means you're mutating stem cells on a major scale because they're developing, right? And it also means you're going to sterilize them, right? And every time I hear the word iodine, I'm very disappointed. So the story about 3 Mile Island, they took these so-called activists that were persistent and said, here, we're going to give you money, we're going to bring in producers, we're going to help you, we're going to shoot a movie and tell the world your story, because they don't know the real truth, right? So it's their story. So I'll take you down that road. I'm sure it's a great film, but when you refuse to acknowledge all the other isotopes and that there's endless diseases and illnesses, not immune deficiencies and injuries, a nuclear plant leak is plugged. Like, you can't plug a nuclear leak, for goodness sakes. Radiation emission and cancer incidences within 10 miles of 3 Mile Island. But cancer is not the only issue. There's heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome. And so the first studies done around 3 Mile Island that you can't miss are going to be Down syndrome and autism, for goodness sakes. We will endure difficulties. Partial meltdown. Big words, the partial meltdown, right at the headline. It's a meltdown. It doesn't matter if it's partial. It's a meltdown. It means everybody needs to run. This is why. And 3 Mile Island, of course, was the catalyst that all nuclear power plants had to have sirens within 10 miles of it. But if you live within 100 miles of a nuclear plant, you're being irradiated. And if you're buying food in that community, you're being incredibly radioactive. And so your children are going to grow up with debilitating illnesses and diseases. And so when you talk about the worst nuclear accident, America's worst nuclear accident, it ain't 3 Mile Island. And 3 Mile Island is really bad, don't get me wrong. But Santa Susana is the worst accident. And Santa Susana released 460 times more radiation. It's like 460 3 Mile Islands melting down. They hid that for over 50 years, right? You know, it's still hidden data. The majority of people have no concept. And the person who wrote that, done that documentary or something, was a lawyer. Should have known everything I'm showing you right now. Cancer incidences among the residents. I mean, the cats and the dogs at 3 Mile Island were dying in cancer clusters, right? Let me see if I can find. Reports enormous increase in cancer deaths. Infant mortality rates doubled. Birds disappeared. Mutations are observed. Allegations of pet deaths after radiation exposure. People left their pets behind, right? Living within sight of a nuclear reactor is the worst. There's 6 times more breast cancer within 15 miles of a nuclear power plant, right? How can you let your children outdoors within 10 miles of a nuclear plant is beyond my brain. Increased risk of cancer. They should have picked up 30 million one-ton bags of radiation around Pennsylvania. But they got the Susquehanna River right there, whisking huge amounts downstream. where there's massive farms all around these places. An increased risk of leukemia was found among the men exposed to higher external radiation doses. This was another study. External, not internal, but external. Man, being evil is just natural for these people, isn't it? Dick Durnford, who was a new governor at the time, he didn't want anybody to evacuate because nuclear industry. Like, no, you can't do that. There was 100 reactors cancelled because of 3 Mile Island. On the third day of the crisis, 3 days too late, he recommended pregnant women and preschool kids within 5 miles leave the area. 3 days later. Like literally a monster. What he done was monstrous in every sense of the word. You won't see any of this in their documentary, I can assure you. He refused to issue a general evacuation order could cause the panic, but that's why you got 100 sirens within 10 miles of a nuclear plant so people can panic and get out of the way, right? Because that's the only option you got. You got no time. You're supposed to panic, right? You're supposed to have a plan and get out of there / panic. 3 Mile Island wants to end sirens test because they said that the site's closed down. With all the fuel safely stored in the pool, but a pool is hemorrhaging radiation. If it's in the pool, it's still splitting atoms into the ecosystem. There's no containment. You don't want to live within 100 miles of these places. That's why they do sex ratio studies on these things, because everybody's irradiated for 100 miles. And so a fuel pool can melt down if you have a major event. If you have a major storm, takes out the site. If you have a tornado cutting through there, it's going to melt down. The fuel pools will melt down. The fuels are exposed to catch fire immediately, burn at 1800 degrees, which set the zirconium cladding will, and that'll set off the plutonium uranium pellets, and they'll burn at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. And you get a real life Chernobyl, or China syndrome, rather. And so this study came out in 2017. We covered it back then. Surge in coal pollution, just in the town of a Pennsylvania area, led to smaller newborns. A scientist, a single scumbag, on Monday said he switched to coal-fired plants in southern United States after 3 Mile Island led to a sharp fall in birth weight, a benchmark of health. But they don't find these studies around all the other coal plants. It was just when the nuclear plant closed down. See? You get what he done? The study looked at the aftermath of 3 Mile Island, which caused 2 nuclear plants to be shut down and their power to be replaced by coal. Coal's great. Just don't live right alongside of it, you're fine. After the energy switch, the weighted newborns fell 5.14%. 5.4%. It wasn't after the energy switch. It's from radioactive fallout. That's why that happened. Otherwise, you would see wherever there's coal plants, children would have these particular attributes, right? And like, they put the coal plants right in the community over the last number of decades and then tell people they need nuclear, see? Oh, well, all you got to do is don't live next door to a coal plant or a gas plant or an oil plant because you're going to get a lot of pollution, right? Common sense. If you had a glue factory and there's a house for sale, would you buy it and raise your family there? No. It has the highest level of air pollution from coal particles emitted by the... the coal particles don't go very far, right? And they're assimilated right back into the ecosystem. But there's nothing on a plant that has an autoimmune trigger to defend against radioactive fallout. And so your body attacks it. All the insects, the birds, the animals, the same thing. Plants, biota, everything attacks radiation as a foreign object. But the gas, oil, and coal emissions are basically carbon. So carbon helps. You can't have trees or plants or grass or humans or birds or insects or anything. If you get rid of carbon, then we look like the moon, right? Or a carbon-based life. And so there's always been lightning strikes long before humans came along, and the planet would burn, forests and cold mountains would catch fire and burn for thousands of years, and the list goes on, right? And it's stardust, right? The stuff we're talking about is stardust. But man-made stuff, which is nuclear, we don't have an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. It's not stardust. When we call it man-made because it's not created by the sun. It's not from the solar system. So you have to treat it with respect. It deserves to be respected because it's such a lead. It's 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. Radiation is, fallout, the physical atoms, the isotopes. So, they're trying to blame the fact that, because they want to keep that nuclear plant open, see? And so they were blaming the adverse health effects that is latent, shows up many years later, of radioactive fallout. Unless you're at the site itself, you can get a lethal dose. But if you're a few miles away, you still get a lethal dose originally from an accident, but it could take a week or a month or a while for you to die, right? There's 865,000 cancers in Japan in the first year. Extra. And not everybody got healthcare, not everybody was diagnosed, not everybody knew they had cancer, right? And cancer is not like a nosebleed where, it's a very visible thing, everybody takes notice of it. 3 Mile Island accident. The weight of newborns fell 5.4%. So this was caused by radioactive fallout. Otherwise, you would see the exact attributes around all coal plants, right? And you don't. 3 Mile Island, an exaggerated risk of nuclear power. They said 3 Mile Island accident caused no physical harms. Look at all the farms in the background. And the Susquehanna River. The answer is no. No one died, no one was injured. This is a complete fabrication. That's what the media is for, apparently. It is to lie to you. And then the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, of course, their job is to promote nuclear, not regulate it. They're a non-regulatory agency. The 2 million people in the area around 3 Mile Island at the time of the accident received an estimated dose of only 1 millirim above the usual background. Well, you're not getting a millirim. You're getting physical atoms in your body. So right there they're talking about 200,000 or 300,000 atoms in your body. Your body has to attack every one of them for the rest of your life with white blood cells, and they're pulsing energy in your body every second. So that's wrecking your chromosomes, your DNA, your cells, everything else, and lesions on your organs from that concoction. So you got gammas, alphas, and neutrons and betas physically in your body. Like cesium-137, 600 feet away, will still irradiate you all day long, all night long, through your house. Pulse through your neighbor's house, your neighbor's neighbor's house, through your neighbor's house, and through your house, and radiate you in the bathtub or anywhere else in the house. All day, every day. It's not supposed to exist on our planet. So more than 100 plants were canceled after 3 Mile Island. So despicable. Here's the NRC saying that they got a millirim. No, you're breathing physical atoms. And 2 million people. So 2 million people got irradiated, is what they're saying. But there was a lot of transients back there and people moving around looking for work in the 70s, right? Early 80s. And they didn't follow anybody. So even though no one died, and there's cancer clusters, for goodness sakes, I showed you earlier. And cancer is just one of the many illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries that'll manifest latent. It was even harmed in 3 Mile. Really despicable. Page is a policy associate at the Institute for Energy Research. In her role, she writes about the impact of government policies on the energy market. She has a bachelor's degree in political monsterness from American University, is from Butler, Pennsylvania. So she turned her back on her own friends and families and loved ones on top of that. What a disgusting parasite to do that. Remembering Ernest Sternglass, the first scientist put a number in the U.S. deaths die at 91 from radioactive fallout from the nuclear war / nuclear testing. Same weapons, same radioactive fallout. In the early 50s and 60s, nuclear testing was roughly 375,000 excess people died from radioactive fallout. They're talking about babies, actually. Dr. Ernest Sternglass. Friday, March the 13th, between 7:50 and 8:15 a.m., uncontrolled burst of radioactive gases vented from the containment building and auxiliary buildings, and a plane carrying detection equipment measured radiation levels between 300 and 1,200 milliriems per hour. These are significant doses in the communities. And if they're flying over it and measuring these numbers, then that's a plume. That's the plume that will cover the planet in about 19.5 days. And this invisible plume pulses energy. Think of it as a snowstorm, but you can't see it or smell it or hear it. Press Secretary Paul Critchlow indicates there's no need to evacuate, but says the government has warned people within 10 miles to stay indoors and close their windows. This is the very, very worst thing you can do. Because you're breathing it in. Your home is saturated with it. You can't live without breathing. You got to drink the water. How are you going to avoid it? It's idiotic. And because they know the people don't understand how it works. A second release of radioactive gases occurs, which is plumes that covers the entire planet, not Pennsylvania alone, but the entire planet. "12:30, he issues advisory of pregnant women and preschool children to evacuate." That's 3 days later. He closed 23 schools 3 days later. People were sheltering in place 10 miles from a nuclear meltdown. Is the worst case scenario. This story, testing of evaporators began at 3 Mile Island. You're not going to see any of the information I'm showing you in that documentary that on 3 Mile Island is coming out. All they're going to talk about is iodine 131. You look it up, it's got an 8-day half-life. They won't even tell you it's got 10 half-lives. So they're going to boil, what they done at Lake Barrett and Arnie Gunnarsson, they boiled off 2.3 million gallons of brutal radioactive water they had collected. Who knows how much got pumped out into the Susquehanna River? Infinitely more than that. Contaminating the nation's worst commercial. And that's the trick, to use the word commercial. Because Los Alamos, Hanford, many of these places have major accidents, way worse than 3 Mile Island. Including Santa Susana, right, which is equal to 463 Mile Islands melting down at one time, with animosity equivalent to radiation. And small amounts of tritium, they say, will gradually release into the air in the form of steam for 18 to 24 months. So they boil off 2.3 million gallons of water for several years. But listen, let's be real. They dumped it in the Susquehanna River, and then they just boiled water. We're talking about Arnie Gunnarsson, for goodness sakes, and Lake Barrett. And it can't be just tritium. It doesn't work that way. You can't filter it out, because if you filter, like the stuff they're pouring over to melt a reactor core, this is lethal doses walking past it by the liter. Like, it's particulates, fuel particulates is going to be in that water. You can't filter it, because if you filter it, you're going to have a criticality in the filter. You're going to have a chain reaction in the filter. So it can't be done. Because you're going to put gammas and alphas and neutrons and betas together. You're going to have a criticality. So you can't filter it. It contains about, and then to add insult They said contains about 18 drops worth of tritium bonded water. 18 drops of tritium. 2.3 million gallons. I'm going to boil it off for 2 years because there's 18 drops of tritium. Dude, these are insane people. This industry is just your worst nightmare came true, and people don't understand it. They said that the release of 2 million people within 50 miles of 3 Mile Island, the release effect will be less than the amount of radiation received from watching color television for a year. So to conflate watching color, which were really bad back then, by the way, but it's a different type of radiation, right? You turn the color television off, and the effects are gone. Whereas your radiations in your body is pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second. Your body attacks it, has to repair all the damage that pulse creates, and also attack the source for the rest of your life, and try to build a sarcophagus around it. You call it a tumor, right? Because your body attacks it for 10, 20, 30, 40 years and builds a sarcophagus around it. It still can't contain it because it can pulse 600 feet. But that's your body's response, is to try to deal with it for the rest of your life. And so you have less oxygen and nutrition. That's a cause and effect. And as you get more into you're more lethargic. You're more susceptible to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless and innocuous and benign. The release effect of the average person living, which is 2 million according to the NRC, will be less than the amount of radiation received from a year of watching color television. Like, how do you get that evil to say something like that, a statement like that? Because that is the definition of an evil statement. To conflate color television with a nuclear meltdown fallout. I mean, that's a whole different level of monstrous. Bedell said the concern for the public sensitivities has mandated the intensive $4 million effort to rid the water of contamination. You can't filter the water, or you'll be doing it everywhere. Most of the radioactive material in the water, including tons of boron, will be separated through filtration, demineralized system, and will be collected and shipped off-site as low-level waste, Bedell said. And he's the spokesperson for the GPU Nuclear Corporation. So you're asking the head of the gang how much harm was caused by the gang. And the head of the gang says, well, there's no harm. Like watching color television for an extra year. You like television, don't you? And those television back then, you know how kids will sit in front of them, because the frequency of the TV was calibrated to the same frequency of a child's mind. And so you can yell at the child, supper's ready, or get up and go to school, or whatever. And the child don't hear you. It's not that they're ignoring you. They just can't hear you. Their brain is being brutalized. And these things will frig up your eyes, and children's eyes, of course, are the most vulnerable. Australia made it illegal a number of years ago for children under 4 to watch television because studies were showing how much harm was caused by it. Federal appeals panel says the state can protect the Hanford workers. This is important. This is meant to go with 3 Mile Island. In 2018, the Washington state legislators passed a bill making it easier for Hanford workers to access workers' compensation benefits when they develop certain illnesses. The law created an assumption that Hanford workers became ill because of an exposure to chemicals/radiation at work at Hanford. And before the bill was passed, Hanford workers suffering from the illness had to prove it wasn't caused by something else in their life. So you have to document everything in your life and prove that you didn't sit alongside the people that were smoking, or because they got a million excuses, right? Or something else in their life. To qualify for the new compensation route for Hanford, if you worked at Hanford any time in the last 80 years for an 8-hour shift, you're entitled to health care and a pension or a payout. Because they recognize that a single exposure, so 2 million people around Pennsylvania that the Nuclear Regulatory and Non-Regulatory Commission acknowledged got radiated. They said it was a millisievert. Their health would have been compromised because this thing attacks your immune system and it gets in your body attacks it for the rest of your life, so you're instantly affected and you're affected forever. If you only worked a single 8-hour shift at Hanford, you're entitled to a pension because that's how dangerous radiation is. So when the whole planet is covered in radiation, fallout, they got a bigger dose than anybody at Hanford would have got, unfortunately. So this model, based on 20 days right here, meant every insect, every bird, every animal, everything on the planet got irradiated permanently. With so much radiation, their thyroids are saturated and their skeletons are producing radioactive stem cells. So their thyroids are producing radioactive hormones. And so when you go look at the birds, you would expect to see emaciated birds, emaciated whales, emaciated animals. You would expect to see this pattern showing up in increments over the next decade. And that's exactly what we've seen post-Fukushima, right? And then why did all the media pretend that the fuel pool and the reactor cores were intact? Noto quake, which was January 1st of this year. Fukushima meltdown memoirs prove once more nuclear power is not for Japan. What happened that day was published by staff from 3 hospitals in Fukushima Prefecture. And the Futaba Hospital, which is north, joined on the hip at Fukushima plant, right? Kuma and Futaba both are on Kuma's south a couple of kilometers and Futaba's north a couple of kilometers. But they're basically joined on to Fukushima, right? And they're abandoned for 13 years. It's 4 kilometers, well, the hospital is, but the town is just less than that, right? And the government issued evacuation orders. Patient began what would be a wandering journey. There's like 90 of them. Dementia patients were left behind. They wandered around and died a horrible death. The explosions at the number 1 reactor building occurred while efforts were underway to transport 40 bedridden patients to a helicopter landing site, along with a loud bang. Smoke rose from a nuclear power plant, and several employees witnessed what appeared to be ash falling, radioactive fallout. Having escaped to a public facility 50 kilometers away, it was discovered evacuees had been exposed to radiation, and the entire facility was designated as a contaminated area. But that whole area would have been pounded with radioactive fallout. Medical personnel were also prohibited from entering, as severely ill patients who were scheduled for transfer were decontaminated with cold water. You can't decontaminate people with water, let alone cold water. Better than nothing, but you can make it worse by washing it, having their body soak it in even quicker, right? And it should be like an air hose. You should be like, there's nowhere safe to do it on top of that. Around 9 kilometers from the disease factory known as Fukushima, the hospital Nami, the director refused the evacuation order because the patients were ill, right? As communications were cut off and anxiety began to spread, you had a tsunami wipe out 1,200 miles of coastline and the infrastructure and telephone poles and everything. They had been abandoned. Another explosion rocked the plant's Medusa, the mixed oxide fuel reactor. And soon after, heavily equipped riot police officers arrived. The hospital director insisted he could not leave the patients behind. In response, an officer said, "The nuclear plant has exploded, you know. Do you want to die?" And the memoirs depict fears of invisible radiation, harsh realities of being abandoned amid the chaos. And they've been abandoned ever since, of course. On the Noto Peninsula, struggling with the aftermath of the January 1st earthquake, we covered extensively. stands the Hokuriku Electric Power Company Shika nuclear power plant in Ishikawa Prefecture. Fortunately, it was somewhat away from the seismic zone. The tsunami also within safety projections. It was 12 feet or something. But the earth rose up 13 feet, and that's the only reason that it getting swamped. Although some external power sources were, and that was for 80 miles of coastline or something, including the Shika coastline. Although some external power sources were cut off, the reactors were out of service at the time and were safe. No, yeah, but the fuel pools are at the top of the reactors. They're boiling water reactors. And water sloshed out of them, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, for these buildings to rock that much, in the town of Shika, there's a town called Shika, which is a couple kilometers away, it was a 7 out of a 7 in Japan's seismic intensity scale of 7. So it was 10 on the Richter scale in that town. And he said in the basement of the Shika number 1 reactor, not the number 2 reactor, which is right alongside it, but the number 1 reactor, in the basement, the earthquake was a 5 point, upper 5, because their scales are 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, all the way up to 7, right? Which is like an 8 on the Richter scale, in the basement of a reactor. So the building, I mean, it's ridiculous to suggest you had that in the basement. The whole site would have suffered a similar fate. It can't be just a basement of a building. But even the Japan Times regurgitated that narrative. There was a lot of media, and we covered it. So the fuel pool can melt down. And even today, we still got no information on it. And like the weather is just mad down here. It's insane weather. It's unbelievable weather we're getting here. Like 3 weeks now, nothing but madness. What would happen if a nuclear accident was added to it? Broken homes are no good for indoor evacuation, indoor shelter. Where should people in isolated villages flee when the roads are... There was 1,400 landslides. And they didn't try to clean them up. And, you know, there was interviews that finally showed up with people in the communities 20 days later. And they're like, why aren't they cleaning up the landslides in their communities? Because, you know, every community got construction companies, every council got plows for the snow, and they got excavators. They could have cleaned the landslides on their side. That's typically what happened. But we didn't see that at the Noto Peninsula, Ishikawa Prefecture. They didn't want people going up there with Geiger counters. And there was we still got no footage of Shik community, let alone the nuclear plant. It's a strange world after all. By reading the aforementioned book and using one's imagination, a conclusion emerges naturally. Nuclear power is not suitable for Japan, a place so prone to frequent earthquakes. There's some videos I shot today. Let's play that for a bit of fun. I'm going to adjust the volume in real time here. Just give me 1 second. And I was trying to put the jack on the boat, grinding off some rust and sand. Found some small issues. We got to figure out, got to repair it or replace it. Nothing you don't expect, right? But as soon as I shut the videos, let's play them for a bit of fun.
There's a button on the back grinders that locks this mechanism.
That broke.
That way you can put a wrench on it and take it off, right? I broke it. I'll figure out something. I might get it because there's no room here. Once you put the wrench on that, you can't get something to hang on to that. Right, so the idea is clamp onto this round black piece and put a wrench on that, and that way you can let it go. And so I was cleaning up. You can see a big difference. Cleaning up the rust on the side of it. You can see the rust. But those flap discs are the best, right, for cleaning up. Let me see if I can show you. Yeah, the flap disc starts just doing a beautiful shine on it right there. But we ran into more problems. some. So the whole suspension, if it wasn't for the axle being bolted onto a steel frame, that would have fell apart on me yesterday. It's the same on the back. It's the same on the back. It's the same. It's the same there.
No big surprise. We'll figure it out.
And same on the back end.
We'll weld it up or something.
Tires got
For time being.
completely rotted. So I'm going to have to put a new axle and tires on. They're not too expensive. In the city, I can get them for a decent price. That's the price. Because you know, we went for a cheap old trailer with the intentions of cleaning it up.
We'll get there.
And I am a little bit, I'm pretty disappointed in that. I might be able to weld it up temporarily. No, might be, I'll weld it up temporarily, but because the tires are cracked, I can put shoe polish in it, I suppose. That's probably what I will do, get a can of shoe polish and fill up the cracks.
I forgot about that.
So that way the Department of Highways pulls me over.
Well, I'll actually
They
do
won't
that
pull
too.
me off the road right away.
I gotta weld up that stuff.
Anything for the species. Anything from Mother Earth.
I think that axle is pretty freaking
We'll get
old.
there. A little disappointed today, but we'll get there. So I only got this bungee cord, and then you got the weight of that holding up the trailer. And so I'm going to take that, put it on this, lift it up, and drill it out and get some bolts into this so it can't get loose on me and take my legs out or scrap me. And I got to chop this off because it's raining and miserable, but it's the only way you're going to get stuff done is to just keep going at it, right? So let's get that done, I guess. Yeah, so the tools make it so much easier to do the job, don't they? So we're going to mount that, and I'll clean it up. Rear impact it. We got lock nuts to go on it, and then we got lock washers to make sure. Brilliant, actually, isn't it? I love it.
Then I'll weld it later when I chop out that centerpiece all the way.
Ready. Let's see if we can cut this off. Seems we got things are starting to come along here.
Yeah, and so got that cut off. It wasn't so hard. And so it's taking shape. I'm going to have to replace that axle at some point. So I think that axle came off a tractor or something. So it's supposed to be, like you said, a 3,500 pound axle, but I don't know what it is. It's not your typical axle. So tomorrow I'm going to pull the tire off and grind everything down and weld it so it's functional and figure things out later. And then I'll have better pictures and videos tomorrow. Now tomorrow night is Chernobyl. Tomorrow's Chernobyl's anniversary. And so we're going to cover Chernobyl tomorrow night, I guess. That's going to be I don't know, I shouldn't say anything because till tomorrow night, but there's going to be hundreds of studies of Chernobyl to help explain why Chernobyl is such a disaster. And why nuclear is such a disaster. 'Cause Chernobyl, the studies from Chernobyl are, because they're old, we got them. Back then, it wasn't quite the taboo to produce evidence, right? Which, you know, I done a video on a whole presentation on Chernobyl about 2 weeks ago. And one thing about Chernobyl is we got a lot of documentation on Chernobyl. So let's come in and close down the poll, I guess. Okay, here we go. Just give me a second. I was trying to get some music going. I gotta watch it because that music jumps, right? Okay, here we go. Should the International Atomic Energy Agency apologize for claiming Fukushima never dumped any water in the Pacific Ocean until August of 2023? This is not rocket science. It's clear that they should apologize for claiming. At least do that much, right? At least have the courage to do that. I mean, it's clear that the buildings don't exist. Where did it go? If it didn't go into the oceans. Really, where did it go? And the amount we're talking about is extraordinary. And then I showed you all kinds of models of the radioactive fall plumes. We have the German models of the ocean after 6 years. But then when they contradict, because when you look at the airborne, it covers the entire planet in 20 days. Right? It covers it in 20 days. So we appreciate everybody on the poll. I see the trolls showed up and went to work on the poll against us. But the thing is, like, we're honest. That's... Well, no, I can get a second-hand trailer axle. They show up all the time for sale. And you still got to buy the springs, and you still got to buy the mounting hardware and everything else. Some, I don't know if what I got there is reusable, but I'm going to fix up what I got and keep using it. I got a lot of work to do. It's not nothing major, though. I would have brought the welder with me and done some welding before I brought it out if I had known. I would have brought the other trailer, actually, and just trailed it out with the other trailer, right? And Buddy told me it was trailable. It was towable, but it turns out clearly it shouldn't have been towed. I took my time and I pulled over every 15 minutes and checked everything anyway. And I would have just pulled over and parked it if it was dangerous, and I would have went and got my other trailer, came back and got it. There's no way I would have kept coming, right? I'm not like the nuclear industry, I'm responsible. I know, you're not supposed to laugh at your own joke. I know Dana and Asana. Dana, you got a couple of welders, real welders down there, do you? Or do you got the wire welders? Have you got real welders? I know you wanted to send me one, but if you got the real ones, like an actual decent welder, I got two nice little welders there for small jobs, and they both got their great uses, right? But I haven't got a real full-on welder. So give me a call, Dana, if you got a big one. You want to send it down to me. I'll take it. You got both wire and stick. I need a stick welder or a big one, Dana. Right, something that can do heavy metals, because I'm lacking that, right? And so give me a call in a few days if you're interested in sending it to me, or whenever it's convenient for you. Because I can't afford to buy a big one, a real one, right? And if you got one, I'll take it. I'm just saying, right? Oh, the show's over, no music. Let's do the ending again. I know it's cheating, but hey. I blinked away too quick today. Alrighty. Good night, everybody. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Tomorrow night's the Chernobyl show. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.